twin sisters from Virginia vanished during what was supposed to be the perfect family escape, a cruise ship holiday meant to stitch together the frayed edges of their single mother's overworked life. For nearly a year, Rachel Marin's world had been nothing but a hollow ache. Her small Charlottesville home transformed into a shrine of unanswered questions. Missing person flyers, each bearing the bright, hopeful smiles of her 8-year-old daughters, lay scattered across the coffee table. Some curling at the corners from weeks of handling, others faded from the sunlight she no longer bothered to shut out. Police reports and case files stood in teetering stacks on her desk. Records she knew so intimately she could recite them like grim bedtime stories. A dozen unopened sympathy cards sat on a side table beside her armchair, their contents unread, because to open them felt like conceding the worst, that her girls were never coming home. She had just touched one envelope when her phone rang. The caller ID made her pulse spike. Detective Mace Alvarez. His voice carried an edge she had never heard before, tight, measured, almost reluctant. He told her a fisherman near Ocracoke Island, North Carolina, had found a suitcase washed ashore, with human remains inside, remains believed to belong to one of her daughters. Rachel's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles went white, her body swaying as if the floor itself had tilted. Alvarez said they would fly there together. The forensic lab was holding the evidence for her to identify. Moving like a sleepwalker, Rachel began packing an overnight bag, her mind yanked backward to the cruise that was supposed to be a dream. She'd saved for months, working extra shifts to give her daughters this adventure. She remembered the late lunch by the pool, the quiet clink of cutlery at 3:30 in the afternoon, the way she had stepped outside for just 5 minutes to take a call in better reception. When she returned, the table was empty. The staff recalled seeing the twins leave but didn't know where. Panic became a living thing inside her as she scoured every deck, every corridor. Security footage showed them watching a poolside performance, but when the crowd dispersed, they simply vanished. The ship was locked down, every cabin searched, passengers questioned, the Coast Guard and FBI notified, ports alerted. Yet there was no trace, no sound, no shadow, no goodbye. Some whispered they'd fallen overboard, others that they were taken during a docking, but every theory was just a hole in the fabric of truth. Now, 10 months later, a suitcase had surfaced with answers Rachel wasn't ready to hear. A knock at her door signaled Alvarez's arrival, and with it, the next chapter of a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Rachel tightened her grip on the overnight bag as she opened the door to find Detective Alvarez standing there, his face a careful mask of composure that couldn't quite hide the gravity in his eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. She gave a small nod, locking the door behind her as they walked to his unmarked police car, each step pulling her closer to either the cruel truth she had dreaded for 10 months or the first tangible clue in her daughter's disappearance. The flight to North Carolina was a silent passage through unspoken fears, Rachel staring out the window as the ground shifted from dense city grids to the pale sands and windswept pines of the Outer Banks. Alvarez quietly scrolling through case notes on his tablet while stealing glances to ensure she wasn't unraveling. At the small regional airport, a local officer met them and drove them to a brick sheriff's substation nestled among swaying pine trees. "The forensic materials from Ocracoke Island were sent here," Alvarez explained. "It's the nearest facility with the right equipment." Inside, the cold antiseptic air hummed under harsh fluorescent lights as a deputy led them through a series of corridors to a secured back room. Alvarez stopped her at the door, his hand warm but firm on her arm. "Prepare yourself," he said, quietly. "What you're about to see will be difficult." She managed a nod, her throat too tight to speak. Wearing masks and sterile gowns, they entered to find a weathered man in his 50s, speaking in hushed tones to an officer. His skin was leathered from years at sea, his hands rough and scarred. "Mrs. Marin," the sheriff said, "this is Curtis Bannister, the fisherman who found the suitcase." Bannister stepped forward, eyes heavy with sympathy. "I'm sorry about your loss, ma'am. I wish I'd pulled something else from the water that day." Rachel acknowledged him with a faint nod, her gaze already drawn to the center of the room. On a stainless steel table lay a battered, square suitcase. Sits one's blue fabric bleached to a sickly gray, its seams warped from months in salt and sun. The medical examiner waited for her signal before opening it. "We've documented everything as it was found," he explained. Rachel braced herself, fingers curling over the counter's edge. When the lid lifted, The breath caught in her chest, a small, decomposed body, wrapped in layers of clothing, preserved just enough to reveal heartbreaking details. 10 months adrift had left the child bloated, discolored, partially skeletal. Cause of death appears to be asphyxiation, the examiner said clinically. No blunt force, no sharp injuries, likely quick and quiet. But Rachel barely heard him. Her gaze was locked on a faded red Minnie Mouse t-shirt and a pair of blue swim goggles. The letter M still faint on the side. "That's Millie's shirt," she whispered, voice breaking. "Those are her goggles. I bought matching sets. For both girls, Millie's had an M, Ray's had an R." The examiner nodded gravely. "We'd like your permission for a DNA sample, though based on your identification." "Yes, of course," Rachel said, her tone flat with certainty. "But I don't need DNA to tell me that's my daughter." Alvarez's hand came to rest on her shoulder as the examiner lifted another evidence bag. Inside was a tarnished silver Zippo lighter, initials K engraved on its side. Rachel's brow furrowed. "This doesn't belong to my daughters. They were 8. They wouldn't have had this." Alvarez studied the lighter, his voice low but firm. "Then we may have just found our first real lead, an anomaly that could point us toward whoever did this." Rachel turned to the fisherman, her voice tight with urgency. "Mr. Bannister, can you tell me exactly how you found this?" He shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking toward the suitcase before meeting hers. "I was walking along the beach near my home, like I do most mornings, when I noticed something washed up that didn't look like the usual driftwood or trash. When I got closer, I caught the smell, and it wasn't good. I opened it just enough to see what was inside, then called the police right away." Rachel's voice trembled as she pressed on. "Was there anything else? Any sign of my other daughter?" Rayleigh Bannister's expression darkened. "Just the suitcase, ma'am. I'm sorry." She turned toward Detective Alvarez, her mind racing. Why would someone put Millie in a suitcase and throw it into the ocean? If they wanted to get rid of her, why not use something that would sink? The sheriff answered, his tone grim. "This type of suitcase is made from a material that can actually float if it's not weighted down. If whoever did this didn't secure it, it could drift for miles before washing ashore." Rachel looked between the officers. "What happens now?" Alvarez explained. "We'll process every piece of evidence. The suitcase is an older model with distinctive features we can trace where it was sold. Same with the Zippo lighter." The sheriff tapped the partially peeled price sticker on its base. "There's a store logo here. Not from any major chain, I know, but it might narrow the search." Rachel studied it, a faint recognition stirring. "That pattern seems familiar, but I can't place it. May I take photos?" The sheriff nodded. "Of course, Sand will send you digital copies of everything." As Rachel snapped pictures, Alvarez continued, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "With this, we're officially reclassifying the case as a homicide. We'll need to re-engage the cruise line, review all the footage again, re-interview the staff, and map the ship's route against ocean currents to see where the suitcase could have been dropped." The sheriff added, "Our forensics team is already analyzing the remains and items inside. DNA testing is underway." Alvarez turned to her. "We'd like you to stay nearby for a few days. We'll need more statements from you as things develop." Rachel brushed a tear from her cheek, her spine straightening with resolve. "I understand. But before I go anywhere, I want to see the beach where it was found." Alvarez hesitated. "Are you sure that's wise?" "I need to," she said firmly. "I have to stand there. If I'm ever going to find Rayleigh, I have to be strong enough to face this." After a moment's pause, he nodded. "All right, I should see it myself too." Bannister spoke up. "My boat's docked nearby. Some of the investigation team is still at the site. I can take you there." Rachel's voice softened. "Thank you. I'd appreciate it." Less than an hour later, they were cutting across choppy waters toward Ocracoke Island. Rachel sat at the bow, salt spray cooling her face, eyes fixed on the horizon as Bannister steered. Alvarez stayed close, alternating between updating his department and watching her for signs she might break. Bannister's voice carried over the engine's growl. "It's just over there," he called, pointing toward a narrow stretch of untouched shoreline. "That's where I found it." He had set his bag down on the small table outside his cabin while locking the door, then strolled toward the resort's main office without noticing the glint of sunlight on the metal object he'd left behind. From her porch, Rachel spotted it immediately, a cigarette pack and a lighter resting carelessly on the table. Drawn by a mix of curiosity and instinct, she crossed the sandy path and picked them up. Turning the lighter over in her hand, her pulse spiked to the underside bore. A price sticker with the exact same store logo as the partial sticker on the evidence lighter found with Millie's remains. The warm coastal air suddenly felt thin and cold. She spotted the man still walking toward the front desk and hurried to catch up, calling out, "Excuse me, forgot this." He turned, surprised, then smiled in recognition. "Thanks, I would have missed that for sure," he said, taking the lighter and cigarettes from her hand. Rachel kept her tone light, her fingers steadying the racing in her chest. "If you don't mind me asking, where did you get this?" "I collect vintage lighters, and I've been looking for this brand." The man shrugged casually. "A little magazine kiosk in Greenville, teeny place, but they sell all sorts of random stuff." "Does it have a name?" She pressed. "Carnes's Corner News, I think. Older guy runs it always. Got some odd bargain going." Her mind was already piecing together the link. "There's a similar shop in Charlottesville, where I live. Might be part of the same chain," she said, fighting to keep her voice even. Before he could answer, a resort staff member approached, holding a square suitcase the same color, size, and style as the one from the beach. "Sir, you sure you want to leave this behind? We found it in your cabin." Rachel's breath caught. "Where did you get that?" she blurted. The man chuckled. "Same place as the lighter. The kiosk owner sold it to me cheap when I bought. The lighter used it once, and the handle's already busted. Total junk. Want it? Saves me throwing it away." "Yes, thank you," she said quickly. "May I get your name and contact information? I'd like to thank you properly." He hesitated, puzzled, but obliged. "Jeff Thornton. Can I ask why you're so interested in my old junk?" Rachel took a measured breath. "I'm here with the police investigating my missing daughters. One of them was found in a suitcase exactly like this." Thornton's expression shifted instantly from confusion to horror. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I hope they catch whoever did that. If there's anything I can do to help, just say so. Your information about the kiosk might be more helpful than you think," she replied. When he left to catch his ferry, Rachel carried the broken suitcase back to her cabin, her mind churning with the implications. Officer Martinez watched silently as Rachel set the suitcase on the floor and reached for her phone, hands trembling. "I haven't left yet," Alvarez answered as soon as she called. "What's going on?" Rachel laid it all out: the lighter, the suitcase, the Greenville kiosk connection. Alvarez's voice sharpened. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to you." 15 minutes later, Rachel stood at the shoreline with Officer Martinez, the wind tangling her hair as she spotted Alvarez approaching alongside Curtis Bannister. From the road above, the news van was pulling away, its crew apparently finished for the day, leaving the fading light to fall on the surf and the weight of a lead that could blow the case wide open. "Show me what you found," Alvarez said. Without a hint of small talk, Rachel led him into her cabin, placing the battered suitcase on the table and describing the lighter with the identical store sticker. The man said he bought them both from a magazine kiosk in Greenville. "Corner News," she explained. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. "Khan's interesting." He grabbed his radio. "Get me everything on a business called Khan's Corner News, in Greenville, owner's name, address, history, everything." While they waited, Rachel told him how the tourist, Jeff Thornton, had described the owner as an older man, always with some deal going on. She leaned forward, voice tightening. "If this suitcase matches the one Millie was found in, and the lighter has the same sticker as the one with her initials, this isn't coincidence." Alvarez studied the suitcase, closely agreed. "This could be the break we've been waiting for." The radio crackled back with a report. "Douglas Carnes, 57, owns 3 locations: Greenville, Charlotte, and a new one opening in Virginia Beach next month." An address for the Greenville store and Carnes's home followed seconds later. Alvarez checked the fading light. "We still have a couple hours before dark. Let's check out this kiosk." They boarded the police boat with Officer Martinez and Bannister, the ride back to the mainland feeling shorter under the weight of urgency. Once docked, Alvarez secured a police vehicle, and they headed straight to the Greenville address. The kiosk was a squat, weathered structure in a strip mall parking lot, its glass windows cluttered with posters for lottery jackpots and local events. Inside, a thin man in his 30s was arranging cigarette packs behind the counter. He looked up. "We're closing soon. Can I help you?" Alvarez flashed his badge. "Virginia State Police. You, the owner? No, sir. I just work here. Mr. Carnes owns the place, comes by maybe once a week. At Alvarez's request, the clerk produced a business card with Carnes's phone number and address. Rachel stepped forward. Do you sell Zippo lighters here? Right there, the clerk said, nodding to a glass case. They were identical in brand and style to Millie's, though none bore the engraved initials. Alvarez showed him a photo of the evidence lighter. Ever seen one like this? The clerk peered at it. Looks like the ones we sell, same model. Customers sometimes get them engraved after. Rachel pressed further. What about suitcases? The clerk shook his head. No, ma'am, we're a newsstand, but Mr. Carnes sometimes brings in random stuff to sell on the side. Could have been one of his. Alvarez thanked him and asked that he not mention their visit if Carnes appeared. Back in the car, Rachel suggested, let's drive by his home. Maybe we'll see something. Alvarez agreed, though caution tempered his tone. We can do a pass, but no warrant means no entry. They rolled through a quiet neighborhood of modest, well-kept houses until they reached a pale yellow bungalow. With white trim and neatly mowed lawn framed the driveway, where a car sat with a license plate reading DKK. Rachel pointed. First letter's DK, last letter K. That has to mean something. Alvarez studied it, but remained guarded. Could be coincidence. We can't jump to conclusions. They watched for several minutes, but the house stayed still and silent. Finally, Alvarez started the engine. Let's head back to the station. We'll build our case, then we'll come back with a warrant. Alvarez's voice was calm but firm as they left Carnes's neighborhood. We need to coordinate with local authorities and plan this right. If Carnes is tied to your daughter's case, we have to be strategic. Rachel reluctantly agreed, fatigue pulling at her shoulders. I'm exhausted anyway. Can you drop me at the ferry station? I'll go back to the cabin tonight. Alvarez shook his head. I'd rather you not take the public ferry. Officer Martinez can run you back in the police boat, safer, more discreet. They headed toward the harbor, but as they neared the dock, Rachel's hand shot out, gripping Alvarez's arm. That car, she said, pointing toward a vehicle idling in the ferry line. The license plate blazed in her mind, DK and KE. Alvarez's eyes followed her gaze, his face hardening. Through the tinted rear glass, the vague silhouettes of an adult in the front and a small figure in the back took shape. Could be anyone, he cautioned, but Rachel was already striding toward the line, something primal driving her forward. I just want to see who's inside. Rachel, wait, Alvarez called, catching up just as she reached the ticketing. Officer, the driver's window was down now, the adult presenting tickets. In the back seat, a woman had her arm clamped around a squirming child. Rachel caught a glimpse profile, hair color, and her heart stuttered. Rayleigh, she whispered, that's my daughter. Alvarez's grip tightened on her arm. You can't just approach random vehicles. We don't have proof. But Rachel pulled free, eyes locked on the girl. I saw her face, just for a second. That's her. Alvarez's hesitation lasted only a beat before he turned to Officer Martinez. Stay with her. I'll handle this. He strode to the booth, murmuring to the ferry officer, both of them glancing toward the car, now 3 vehicles from boarding. Moments later, the officer signaled for the vehicle to pull aside for a secondary check. Rachel's pulse thundered as the driver eased to the shoulder butt. Then the tension snapped. The driver, a man in his 50s, flung open his door, bolting into the line of parked cars. From the back seat, a woman in her 30s climbed out, yanking the girl after her. That's her, Rachel shouted. That's Rayleigh. The trio threaded between bumpers, the man leading, the woman half dragging the struggling child. Alvarez's radio crackled with his urgent call. Suspects fleeing on foot at Ocracoke Ferry Terminal. Possible kidnapping victim. Adult male, adult female, female child, approximately 8 years old. Request immediate backup and perimeter lockdown. The harbor officer relayed the alert over his own channel as the terminal erupted into motion. Sirens, shouts, the slam of car doors. Alvarez sprinted after the suspect's weapon, drawn but angled. Low. Police, stop where you are, he bellowed. The man glanced over his shoulder, shouted something to the woman, and pushed harder through the maze of vehicles. Within minutes, police cruisers screeched into position at the exits, officers on foot giving chase as startled passengers scattered to the edges of the chaos. The ferry terminal descended into organized chaos as officers halted boarding, directing, waiting passengers to secure areas while the dragnet tightened. Rachel stood with Officer Martinez, her eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. The man was taken down hard by 2 officers as he scrambled to scale a security fence, while the woman, still clamping her hand around the child's wrist, tried to slip between rows of parked cars. Within seconds, police surrounded her, weapons leveled. "Let go of the girl," an officer ordered. The woman hesitated, then released her grip. The child bolted, eyes darting wildly, till they found Rachel. Recognition flared instantly. "Mom," she cried, voice breaking. Rachel tore free from Martinez, running full speed across the lot until she fell to her knees, arms wrapping around her daughter Rayleigh. "Oh my God," she sobbed, holding her close, feeling the frail, trembling frame against her. The girl clung to her, crying so hard her words dissolved into muffled fragments against Rachel's shoulder. Alvarez approached, his relief tempered by the need for control. "We've got them in custody," he said quietly. "We need to get you both somewhere safe while we process them." Rachel, still unwilling to let go, asked, "Who are they?" "Douglas Carnes and Kathy Evans, husband and wife," Alvarez answered. Rachel's eyes widened. "Kathy Evans, the initials on the lighter." Alvarez nodded grimly. "We've impounded their vehicle. Preliminary search shows multiple suitcases in the trunk and concerning materials in the back seat." Only then did Rachel take in the full condition of her daughter, painfully thin. Her skin darkened as if artificially tanned, hair cropped shorter than Rachel had ever allowed, and eyes carrying a weight far beyond her years. "She needs medical attention, already on the way," Alvarez replied. Paramedics arrived moments later, gently checking Rayleigh, though she refused to release her mother's hand. She flinched at the penlight, turning away with a small whimper. "Please stop taking pictures," she murmured. Rachel exchanged a quick, troubled look with Alvarez. Nearby, officers emerged from the suspect's vehicle, their expressions grim. 2 boxes of illegal magazines in the trunk, one reported to Alvarez in a low tone. "Child-focused," then syringes with what appears to be a sedative in the back seat. "Looks like they were planning to drug her before boarding." Alvarez's jaw tightened. "Get CSI here, no, document everything." Rachel heard enough to feel her grief for Millie ignite into pure fury. She broke from Martinez's side and strode toward Carnes, who was being secured in a cruiser. "You monster," she shouted. "You didn't just smuggle your filthy magazines, you murdered my daughter, you murdered Millie." Carnes met her eyes, disturbingly calm. "I didn't mean to kill the other one," he said flatly. "I wanted to keep both, but my partner backed out. I couldn't handle 2 without getting caught. I had to make a choice." Rachel lunged at him, but Alvarez caught her, dragging her back. "Save it for the station," he snapped at Carnes. "You have the right to remain silent. Use it." As the cruisers pulled away, a paramedic approached with an update. "She's been drugged with a mild sedative. Signs of malnutrition and physical abuse. We need to transport her to the hospital now for full treatment." Rachel turned back to Rayleigh, determination cutting through her exhaustion. "I'm coming with her." Alvarez nodded. "Of course, I'll meet you there after we process them. This is just the beginning. Rachel will need statements once she's stable." Climbing into the ambulance, Rachel took her daughter's hand, holding it tight as the sirens rose and the vehicle sped toward the hospital. Grief for Millie, still raw, but burning now alongside a fierce, unshakable resolve. Rachel felt a fierce rush of gratitude that at least one of her daughters had been found alive. Leaning close, she stroked her child's cropped hair and whispered, "It's over, Rayleigh. You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore." The harsh fluorescent light in the hospital hallway made her eyes ache as she paced outside the emergency room. Officer Martinez stationed nearby, watchful over both her and the entrance. A nurse had gently but firmly asked Rachel to wait, while the team documented her daughter's condition. And though it tore at her to be apart so soon after their reunion, she understood. When the nurse finally reappeared, Rachel was ushered into a room where Rayleigh lay looking impossibly small against the stark white sheets, and for feeding clear fluid into her arm. "Mom," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible. Rachel took her hand, careful not to jostle the tubing. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." The attending physician, Dr. Patel, approached with a clipboard and a measured, compassionate gaze. Her words came with the weight of clinical precision and deep concern. Rayleigh was malnourished, significantly underweight for her age. She bore bruises on her back and legs, the kind left by narrow, flexible instruments like a rattan cane or thin belt. There were also ligature marks on her wrists and ankles, signs of prolonged restraint, possibly by chains or zip ties. Lowering her voice, Dr. Patel added that Rayleigh appeared unusually sensitive to bright light and camera flashes, coupled with comments she had made during the exam. It raised a deeply troubling suspicion. She might have been forced to pose for exploitative photographs. Rachel's chest constricted, her eyes closing briefly against the swell of rage and grief. "What's the plan?" she asked. Dr. Patel explained that they would address the malnutrition with careful, monitored feeding, and the sedatives in her system would wear off within a day. Physically, she could recover quickly, but the psychological wounds would run deep and require specialized therapy. "She's strong," Dr. Patel said, giving Rachel's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Having you here will make all the difference." When the doctor left, Rachel pulled a chair beside the bed, holding her daughter's hand as the girl drifted in and out of sleep, murmuring fragments Rachel couldn't quite understand. Hours passed in a rhythm of nurse visits and quiet vigil. Night had fully fallen when Detective Alvarez appeared in the doorway. "How is she?" he asked softly, glancing at the sleeping form. Rachel led him into the hall. "Physically, she'll recover," she said, voice steady despite the strain. "Emotionally, that's going to take time." Alvarez's expression was grave. "I have updates from the interrogation. Carnes isn't saying much, but Evans is. Talking, trying to cut a deal." Rachel's stomach knotted. "What has she told you?" "A lot," Alvarez admitted, rubbing tired eyes. "They weren't acting alone. They're part of a larger operation producing and distributing illegal material involving children. Carnes was responsible for supplying the victims. Others handled the production." The bile rose in Rachel's throat as the reality hit. This nightmare was far bigger and far darker than she had ever imagined. "How many children are we talking about?" Rachel asked, her voice steady but edged with dread. Alvarez didn't sugarcoat it. "Based on Evans's statement, at least 10 others are being held at a property Carnes owns under another name. Our teams are moving on that location now." Rachel's throat tightened. "And my daughters? How did he get to them on the cruise?" Alvarez exhaled heavily. "Evans says Carnes boarded under a fake name, using a prepaid card and burner email. He stole a maintenance crew uniform from a storage closet early in the trip and used a small electronic device to temporarily disable the security camera in the area where he took the girls. He'd been watching them earlier, saw them at a magic show, and used that as his way in. When he found them alone, he performed a simple card trick he'd learned from the ship's magician. It gained their trust, and he led them into a crew hallway with fewer cameras." Rachel's eyes shut as she pictured her daughters following a man who seemed kind, unaware of the danger. "And Millie, what happened to her?" Alvarez's expression darkened. "Evans wasn't there for that part, but according to her, Carnes originally planned to take both girls. His partner at the time, not Evans, backed out when he realized they were twins. Keeping 2 children was too risky. Carnes suffocated Millie, no struggle, no sound, then wrapped her in her clothes, placed her in the suitcase, and dumped it overboard from an unsecured deck used for waste disposal. That same night, he kept Rayleigh hidden in his cabin bathroom until they docked in Key West the next morning. He drugged her just enough to keep her compliant and threatened her about Millie. Disguised with sunglasses, a fake beard, and a change of clothes, he slipped off the ship during the early morning rush. Alvarez went on to explain how Carnes moved her across multiple states from Florida to North Carolina, staying ahead of detection. "Do you think he was stalking us before the cruise?" Rachel asked, a cold realization creeping in. "Evans confirmed it," Alvarez said. "Carnes mentioned seeing beautiful twin girls in Virginia and thought they'd be perfect for their next edition. This was planned." Rachel swallowed hard. "And the lighter with the K?" "Coincidence," Alvarez said. "It was Evans's personal lighter, mixed in with Millie's belongings, when Carnes was rushing to dispose of the body." Rachel's jaw set. "We have to make sure they never get out. And those magazines, destroy them. No child should have their trauma passed around forever." Alvarez's voice was firm. "We're already working with federal authorities. This is bigger than one case, but I promise you they'll pay." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "Get some rest. We'll need you strong when she wakes up." When he left, Rachel returned to Rayleigh's bedside, settling into the uncomfortable hospital chair. Despite the horror of what she'd learned, There was grim satisfaction that the predators were caught and a fragile hope that her daughter was finally safe. She drifted into an uneasy sleep, waking to soft morning light filtering through the curtains. For a moment, disorientation held her. Then the memories came flooding back. Rayleigh still slept, her color a little better than the night before. The four had been replaced, and a tray of untouched breakfast sat nearby. A gentle knock broke the quiet, and Nurse Stephanie stepped in, followed by Dr. Patel. "Good morning," Dr. Patel said softly as she stepped into the room. Rachel, still perched at her daughter's bedside, looked up wearily. Restlessly, she answered when asked how Rayleigh had slept. She had nightmares. Kept talking. In her sleep, the doctor nodded, scanning the chart. "That's to be expected. The sedatives in her system are still wearing off. We'd like to run a few more tests a day, with your permission." Rachel didn't hesitate. Whatever she needs. While Dr. Patel worked, Officer Martinez appeared in the doorway, her uniform rumpled from a night spent in a chair. "Mrs. Marin," she said. "Detective Alvarez called. He's on his way with an update." Rachel gave her a grateful nod. "Thank you for staying all night." Martinez offered a tired smile. "Just doing my job, ma'am, though. I've never seen a case like this in all my years. You're one lucky woman to have found your daughter alive after all this time." Rachel's eyes dropped to the sleeping form in the bed. "If I were lucky, I wouldn't have lost either of my daughters," she said quietly. Martinez's expression softened. "I'm sorry that was insensitive." Rachel sighed. "You're right in a way. Many parents never get closure. At least I have Rayleigh back, and I know what happened to Millie." Her voice trembled on her sister's name. Dr. Patel finished her exam. "Her vitals are improving. The sedatives are clearing from her system, but she's still severely malnourished. We'll start her on a carefully monitored diet today." Rachel asked the question, pressing on her heart. "When can I take her home?" "Not for at least a few days," Dr. Patel replied. "We need to stabilize her physically and begin psychological assessments. Even after discharge, she need ongoing care." Rachel nodded, resigned to the long road ahead. About an hour later, Rayleigh stirred, her eyes blinking open, confusion giving way to recognition. "Mum," she whispered, almost as if afraid. Saying it aloud might make her disappear. Rachel moved to the edge of the bed, taking her hand. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now." But Rayleigh's next words made Rachel's chest tighten. "Millie. Where's Millie?" Rachel swallowed hard, the answer lodged in her throat. Before she could speak, Detective Alvarez appeared in the doorway, his expression solemn but tinged with purpose. "May I come in?" Rachel nodded, relieved for the interruption. "Morning, Rachel," he greeted, turning to the little girl, his tone softened. "Hello, Rayleigh. I'm Detective Alvarez. I've been helping your mom look for you." Rayleigh shrank closer to her mother, but Rachel reassured her. "It's okay, he's one of the good guys." Alvarez kept his distance, speaking gently. "I thought you'd want to know we conducted a raid early this morning on another property, owned by Douglas Carnes. It was on Cedar Island, where he planned to take you yesterday. We rescued 3 more children who were being held there." Rachel gasped. "Are they all right?" "They're getting medical attention now," Alvarez said. "Some have been missing over a year. We're working to identify them and contact their families." A fierce satisfaction flared in Rachel's chest. "What about Carnes and Evans? Are they talking?" "Evans has given a full confession in exchange for some leniency," Alvarez confirmed. "She says she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. She coordinated a lot for her husband. Carnes is still refusing to cooperate. But with Evans's testimony and all the evidence we've collected, he's looking at multiple life sentences." Rachel's gaze hardened. "Good. I hope they rot in prison for a very long time. And the wife, she still helped keep my daughter captive for months. She's still..." Her voice faltered, unable to finish. Alvarez nodded gravely. "She faced substantial charges." Alvarez assured her that while Evans's cooperation might reduce her sentence, she would not walk free. Rachel glanced toward the doorway where Rayleigh lay. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "We'll need a formal statement from you," Alvarez replied, "and eventually, when she's ready, from Rayleigh as well. But there's no rush, her recovery comes first." Rachel nodded, the gratitude in her eyes unmistakable. "Thank you, Detective, for everything." Alvarez's voice softened. "I'm just glad we found her. In all my years, cases like this rarely end with a child coming home alive." After he left, Rachel returned to the bedside. Rayleigh was awake again, her gaze fixed on her mother as if afraid she might vanish if she looked away. "Mom," she whispered, "Millie's gone. Isn't she really gone?" Rachel drew a deep breath, sat down, and took her small hand. "Yes, sweetheart, Millie is gone. The bad man hurt her very badly." Tears welled in Rayleigh's eyes. "I knew it. He told me she was gone, but I didn't want to believe him. I thought maybe she was somewhere else. Like me, that you'd find us both." Rachel's own tears slipped free. "I wish we had. I looked for both of you every single day. I never stopped." Rayleigh's voice trembled. "I was so scared. After they took us and Millie was gone, they kept moving me to different places. They changed how I looked. They made me stand still for pictures, and if I cried, they hit me. They said if I tried to run or tell anyone, they'd hurt you too." Rachel gathered her close, careful not to disturb the ivy. "You were so brave, so brave, and you don't have to be scared anymore. Those people are going to prison for a very long time. They can never hurt you or anyone else again." For a long time, mother and daughter simply held each other, their shared grief for Millie mingling with the fragile relief of reunion. Eventually, the medication made Rayleigh drowsy, and she drifted off in her mother's arms. Rachel laid her gently back on the pillows, and that's when she noticed a small scar near her hairline, a likely remnant of the months of abuse. It was a mark of all that had been stolen from her, her innocence, her safety, her sister. But in the stillness of her sleeping face, Rachel also saw the same unyielding spirit that had carried her through. The road ahead would be long, filled with therapy, nightmares, and moments where grief would crush them both. There would be a funeral for Millie and days when the loss felt unbearable. Yet, for the first time in 10 months, hope stirred in Rachel's chest. They would rebuild honoring Millie's memory while helping Rayleigh heal and grow strong again. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, brushing the girl's hair from her forehead. "Somehow, someday, we're going to be okay." Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, stretching away the long shadows, a silent promise that even after the darkest night, dawn will always come.